how are you feeling? Can you experience that without trying to correct it? Can you just notice that you are a body? And can you do it without assuming that you know how you feel? Can you just pay attention to that? And I can look across the room and see everyone's energetic practice change. Here's your permission to take up space. Yeah. Here is your permission to breathe. Here is your permission to experience your blood, your bones, your guts, your muscles. I mean, that's the thing. Like, we are human people living inside these bodies that we live in hopefully for 80 to 90 years. And it's like, feel that for a minute.
Do you remember what it feels like to be comfortable in your own skin? Not just confident, but also pain-free, relaxed, healthy, and carefree. Think about the most robust version of your own childhood body. This is what Lifeyness feels like, a joyful spirit and a vibrant physical state of being. I'm your guide, Professor Sarah, storyteller, teacher, and wellness enthusiast. Reach into the vitality of your own girlhood to supercharge your grown-up life. Welcome back to Lifeyness. Thanks for joining me today. We're going to talk about dance and movement, and also we're going to touch on managing mental health with dance and movement. So for someone who works as a professor and a writer, I am surprisingly bad at sitting still for very long periods. Like, of course, I love to write and read and think through complex ideas. And of course, I love watching TV and movies. But I also have to move my body. I'm not hardcore, like I'm not a runner, but I just have to go outside and move around. Like, I've probably been conscious about physical fitness like in the past, and that's why I do what I do. But I think truly this arose from a mental health need more than anything, like exercise, movement. It really breathes life into what could otherwise be a very dark and depressive mind. So I'm very grateful that I discovered that. I'm also grateful for the leaders in the space of fitness and movement, like in my life. So even like at my local Y, my body balance teachers, my yoga instructors, Pilates instructors. So this leads me to my next guest, Becca Levy. She is a colleague of mine at the college where we teach together, but she's so much more than that. So I'm going to tell you a little story. Once upon a semester, I took a class with her, right? So one of the wonderful benefits of working at the institution where I teach is that I get to take free classes if and when I can find the time. So one semester, I signed up for a class in the dance department where Becca teaches and basically runs the department. And keep in mind, I secretly love to dance, but it's very much a secret. So not so great at it. But instead of actually taking a dance class, I thought it would be much safer to take a Pilates class, which I'm familiar with. So anyway, I signed up for this class. And in, I think it's like February of 2020, we met for the first time once in this little studio, which is surprisingly well equipped at the campus with Pilates equipment. And of course, we all know what happens next. Classes go online. All of us, teachers and students, we're all left to maybe not our own devices, but totally different devices. You know, Becca is coaching us in how to learn online, but she, like me, is just learning to teach online. So with something like Pilates and dance, it was very challenging for her as a professor, because that's just such a physical thing, and it's almost impossible to communicate if you're not in the room with other bodies. So, but we proceeded, we got through, and then fast forward 2 years later, and I finally gained the nerve to take an actual dance class at Jacksonville Dance Theatre. So This is an organization that Becca co-founded in our community. And that class is so much fun. I take it now and then still. But it reminds me, it's basically open to beginners or intermediate. But when I'm in the class, it reminds me of that feeling when you're a little girl, right? And you're playing with other kids. And there's always like that one little girl who's better at dance than the rest of us. Or maybe is bossier than the rest of us. And she's the choreographer, right? Like, so when I'm in this, in the room with these other women, and I think there's been men in that class as well, but it kind of gives you that feeling that you're in the backyard, like someone's got their little pink boombox out blaring some pop song, and we're all like pretending to be like ballerinas. But anyway, in this class, I was just kind of swept away with this magical feeling. My immediate thought was that every grown-up who wants to get in touch with their inner child ballerina needs to do this. It seriously felt like 60 minutes of this class could cure all blues or nerves for the rest of the day. So, of course, I asked Becca to come on the show. But as I dug a little into her story, I realized that she has had her own struggles with mental health, specifically anxiety. In fact, in 2019, she began speaking publicly about it in a way through a short film collaboration titled Disorder, which I'll put a link to in the show notes. But she was able to talk about some of her struggles and illustrate them through her own choreography. So here is Rebecca Levy. She is a choreographer, performer, and educator based in Jacksonville, Florida. She's the artistic director and co-founder of Jacksonville Dance Theatre, which was co-founded in 2012, and they work to change the art culture of the city, which I think is super cool. And she's had tons and tons of contributions to this community and to the arts community, which is amazing. And I will put her bio in the show notes. So I hope you enjoy this interview with Becca and me, where we talk about dance and movement and just kind of awareness of mental health, specifically anxiety. This is going to be part one of 2 parts. I think anxiety has had such an impact on modern day life, especially in the last 3 years. You almost can't talk enough about it or get enough support and help and awareness. We begin here talking a little bit about being empathic and feeling all the range of feelings and kind of sometimes having too much feeling. I hope you enjoy.
Someone told me once that I am very empathic. I don't know if any of that is like, because I feel like everyone I know is empathic. And like, I'm an empath. I don't know if that's actually true, but like I just feel so much that I have like which is why I've had to work really hard on personal boundaries, because it's like I feel and sense everything. So when I was a kid, it was just like a barrage of sensation constantly. So,
well, that's interesting because it seems like people who are worriers or are diagnosed with anxiety, a lot of that is imagination. Like you're imagining the future. Yeah. Very clearly. Like, right. Very painfully.
Right. I have like considered every disaster.
Right. Yeah. All of the scenarios. Yeah. I didn't. Like, I feel lucky that, and I think that's why when I watched your video, I feel like I was looking into another world that I've never experienced, and I'm kind of glad, but I know a lot of people who have experienced that, and that's like, I have a different set of problems, but that video really clearly showed me what that world is like for you. But I think that's got to be really closely linked to your childhood imagination and just your imagination in general.
That's a nice thought. I mean, I don't think I've ever connected that. That's a nice thought. I mean, and it's interesting too to hear about you, and then like the way in which you communicate through your writing, that you had a really different sensation, like a really different engagement in your, imaginary world. It's cool. I'm thankful to know that, actually, because I think I even said that in that video. I can talk more about that too if you want to, like the process of making that, because it was interesting. I also made it, like I recorded that in 2019, pre-pandemic, so it was 4 years ago. So the person who I am now I feel like is different a little bit. Not to say that I don't experience those things or it's not a part of my history, but when I listen to it now, I'm like, whoa.
Oh, that's so good to know. Okay, so let me just backtrack a second. So I watched your video, which is called Disorder, right? And there were a couple parts to it.
Yeah, there are 2 films, but the project was actually a proscenium. Like I created it for the stage.
Okay.
So it exists in a piece of live choreography, but a little bit out of necessity, it shifted to a film during the pandemic. And it just so happened that when we were in the pandemic and when I was working on this, I had a grant to work on it. Everything closed down, including the Florida Theater, which was dark. And so they let me film in there when it was dark. Oh. Which was super cool. So it was like I was filming this piece that was supposed to be performed, and I adapted it to a piece of dance film inside of a theater that was supposed to be live, but it was closed down.
Okay.
And so it was, not only was it dark, like as we say in the theater, it's dark, there's no show, but it was literally dark.
It's dark.
Like, there was no showses, no people.
So, okay. So in the Disorder, and the choreography was also called Disorder.
Same name.
Okay. So definitely walk me through like how you created that piece. And then I'm really curious to know how things have changed and how you feel differently when you listen back to it.
Yeah. Okay. That's all good questions.
That's a lot.
No, it's good. I mean, it's nice for me to talk about things I know about. So I met a composer. His name is Mark Snyder. And at the time he was professor of music at Jacksonville University. And we met kind of like through mutual art friends. And we like, you know, when you meet a person who you're artistically drawn to and there's like a connection, and he and I just like he jokes at the time, like I'm sober now, but at the time I wasn't when I met him. And he like brought a bottle of wine to our friend's house, and I like drank the whole bottle. Like he brought it as a gift and I drank it, and he's like, yeah, we finished a bottle of wine together. So he is a colleague, and he loved working with choreographers. So we started a kind of a collaboration that I wrote a grant for. And when we were working on it, we were kind of like trying to think about what is something that resonated with both of us, and almost shocking about his own like mental state. Said something to me, and it struck me. I was like, and then we were talking about like the type of work, and I was like, well, one thing that we have in common seems to be we had talked about that, and I'm like, okay, well, we seem to land on this in common, and it's like definitely something on my mind, and let's try it. So his idea is that he works mostly with electronic music, not exclusively, but at the time that was the thing he was working with. So he was like, well, why don't you come over? And we used not just me, but like a few other dancers involved in the project. He's like, why don't you come over and I'll record you talking. And then his method was to like, it's really beautiful. What he does is he takes the text and then he distorts it into music. Like you wouldn't even necessarily know that someone was saying something. Like it's so beautiful. He's really, really talented.
That's amazing.
Right. And so the piece Disorder that's for the stage is like 35 minutes long. And that's the only section you can hear words in it, is the one that I talk. Like you can hear like in some of the other sections, you'll hear someone be like, anxiety, like very, very quiet. But everything else is so kind of like modified that you wouldn't even know it's a human voice. But when I started talking, like we were sitting like as you and I are here now, he like just kind of put the mic in front of me and he was like, talk about anxiety. And then I just like, I think I blacked out. Like, I don't even remember what I said.
Wow.
I just like, he put the mic on me and I was like, boom, go speak. And I was just, well, you can hear it in the recording. Like I was like so manic. I was just like, and it's like this, and it's like this, and it's like this, and I have to do this, and I have to make sure that I'm this way. And like, these are the ways that it affects me. And like, you know, it's so funny because I've been managing the symptoms of it for so long that I can speak about it really, really well. Like I can be like, this is exactly how I feel. This is exactly what my sensations are. It doesn't help me to feel better. Like I don't, you know, necessarily like talk therapy is, we can turn back to that if you want to, but like speaking it into existence, like doesn't necessarily feel like it's helping me. It's not cathartic necessarily, but I can do it. Like, you know,
you were just like explaining your daily management, right?
Right. Daily management or like physical symptoms or like the fact that I thought that I probably had it in childhood and everyone missed it because my parents would like suck it up. It was 1985. You know what I mean? And so I just let her rip. And I was like, cool, no problem. Because whatever I say, he's going to turn into music and no one's going to know what I said.
Oh, wow.
So anyway, that was wrong because he was like, well, he's like, but the cadence of the way that you were speaking and kind of the relentless way that you were speaking, he's like, I put a samba beat to it and that just seemed right. And then he like sent it to me and I listened to it and I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
I was like, that's out.
Yeah.
I think that the most interesting, or God, anxiety is not interesting. Actually, it's like incredibly boring, which I think is like its worst quality is that it's just like kind of the same thing over and over and over again. And it doesn't ever like figure out ways to become like lighter or more interesting. It's like one of those human emotions or responses that it doesn't feel fun investigating. It's not even like sorrow where you could like extract some sense of like deepness from. It's just awful. And I figured out that I had an anxiety disorder. Why it wasn't obvious, I don't know, but I figured it out like around my late 20s, early 30s because I was diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. But then when I look back at my childhood, I can see that I was an anxious child. Like, and I probably had I was like, it's up to me whether or not I use it. Like, obviously, he'll publish it, but like, it'll reach people people.
Yeah, people that you know.
Yeah, and I was like, but when the first time that I heard it, it kind of like knocked me on my ass. Like, you ever have that experience? Like, you hear something and you're like, oh, fuck, I can't believe this. Like, okay, well, I guess I'm doing it. You know, like, because it resonated with me, even though it was something that I had said. Like, I almost didn't remember what I had said.
Yeah.
And when I heard myself saying it back, I was like, oh crap. So then
I know that moment very well. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you must feel that way as a writer all the time.
And you're like, why did I do that?
Why am I doing that?
It's almost like you have to. Like, things get so bad that you either hold it in and die or you go the other way.
Yeah. I had somebody tell me once that you either, I don't remember how they said it, but it was like, when you go through hard things, they were like, you have to go through hard things because otherwise you have to go through other hard things that are harder later.
That's a good point.
And I was like, okay.
Either way,
I felt like that with my TED Talk too. I was like, why am I doing this? Like,
yeah.
And mine wasn't even as vulnerable as yours, so I understand that completely. So that was kind of like how the like score came about.
So do you think that's the first time you spoke publicly about anxiety? Or not publicly, but just kind of to a community?
Yeah. Outside of like my partner.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that's
huge.
I think if I speak about the way that I am feeling frequently because it's just how I have to process, because again, like, I'm so close to the surface that I will like explode if I don't communicate somehow.
Yeah.
So whether it be verbally or through movement or whatever. So I think the people close to me knew, but I certainly never said it like that. Mm-hmm. And no one had ever just isolated my voice with a samba beat behind it.
Right.
It's like this, like, I can hardly listen to it.
I felt a little stressed, but I felt like I understood what was going on in your mind and it really gives a good illustration of what it feels like to have that kind of anxiety. And it really resonated with what other people I've heard have the same thing. But I wonder if you could just real quick in like, I don't know, like 20 seconds, just summarize what you expressed and then like what it does feel like to have anxiety.
Yeah. And I was trying to, I'll try in 20 seconds because my experience now has shifted a little bit. But back then when I was talking about it, I was trying to explain how it was like not just a feeling of sad or scared. Like, I actually said this, it's like a terror that you're going to die. Mm-hmm. And that the way that was manifesting for me was both emotional, mental, and physical.
Yeah.
Like with cramping in my body, and that I didn't understand why. Like, I couldn't figure out where the chicken and egg were. Did it come from a physical problem that I had when I was young and it just manifested as anxiety? Or was I kind of like, is it in my DNA? You know, there's this, like, I had a therapist say once to me that, like, for Jewish people, like, anxiety lives in our DNA because we've endured so much tragedy. And I was like, you know, I don't know if I'm not a scientist, so I don't know if there's truth in that, but I mean, it certainly makes sense to me. So I was like, was this passed on from my ancestors, or was I just misunderstood as a child, or am I just, was
there some dark trauma that you don't know about?
Right. Yeah. Right. Like, because I was like, this is crazy. You know, it's like I am so smart and in tune with myself and understand intelligently what is happening, but I am still experiencing it. And I felt like that was so problematic. Yeah. Because I felt like I was just kind of like fighting a demon every day just to do, I'm sure you've come across this with people you know in your own life, like just to live a normal life. Yeah. It was like, wake up, stand in front of students, teach. Right. Stand on stage, present, like, you know. So when I made that, I think I was just tired of it.
So how have things changed? Like, you mentioned that you're sober now. Yeah. And that's a piece of it, I'm sure. What else?
That was a big piece of it. I didn't become sober intentionally. It's going to sound so funny. It's kind of like a longer story, but it was a great side effect. During the pandemic, my anxiety, like, it's funny how it all came to a head because I was working on that film and everything, but I was just like, being isolated is super hard for everyone. I know you were talking about being an introvert and that you kind of like enjoy, like, I remember you saying that about like you and your ex-partner would just be like, yeah, let's just stay home. I am not a person that lives that way. Like, I like to have downtime, but I need to be around people, and the art that I make requires bodies. And so I couldn't make art, and I was losing it. And then we were like at the college forced to go online. And I think you were in one of my classes at the time. Like,
I was
teaching online. Yeah. Teaching online was Pilates, right. And teaching online was like my nightmare come true. It was like everything that I think is important was stripped away.
It was, yeah.
You know, and I think that I have a lot to give energetically when I'm in the room with people. I feel like you know, I'm sure it's not true. I'm sure I have qualities that people appreciate online, but all to say, when we went online, I personally just felt like I had lost all of ability to communicate. I was like, I turned a corner in my anxiety that was like very bad. And it was even like, I was trying to communicate it to Miko, my husband, like, because I think I'm so stoic looking that like people just think I'm okay, you know, and I was just trying to be like, I'm not okay right now. Like, I don't know how else to explain this, but I'm not okay. And he did a really good job, but it was actually my best friend, Katie, who she's in one of these posters. That one.
She's in the dance fitness class sometimes, right?
Yeah, she used to come. Yeah, she and I run Jacksonville Dance Theatre together, and I've known her since 1999 or something. We went to undergrad together, and so I know her really well. Like, I would say we're even kind of like one step beyond friends. We're like family. Yeah. And she was like, "You need help," and she's like, and so it was like kind of like. I don't need to get emotional. It was like such a big gift, actually, because like her father's a psychotherapist, and she was like. It's so sweet. Like, a friend did this for me. Like, not even a family. You know, she is family, but like, she like wrote her father and she CC'd me. It was like so funny. On our JDT email, she like CC'd me and she was like, Becca needs a therapist. Please find her a woman who is in her 50s or 60s. Who like understands that the patriarchy is bullshit. Like, she had all this requirement. It was like it was like, you know, she's an incredibly generous person anyway, but it was really like one of the biggest acts of love I felt from a friend, like maybe ever. Like, definitely. I don't know. It was beautiful. And so she found me this, like, her dad, it's like so funny to think about it. Her dad referred me to this woman who does DBT therapy. And it was, that was a game changer for me.
I don't know what that is.
It's the dialectical behavioral therapy.
Okay.
And it's like an offshoot of, it's not CBT, because CBT doesn't work for me because I understand what is wrong. It's not that I don't get it.
Right.
It's that it didn't matter.
Yeah.
So the dialectic is cool. It's freaking super cool.
Yeah.
But it's essentially this idea that like many things can exist at the same time. Like that's what I took out of it. You know, they give you like a lot of tools in that therapy, but what I took from it is that a lot of things can exist at the same time. I can feel this way, and also things can be full of joy. And that just because that I am having this response does not mean that something is wrong necessarily. And it gave me a lot of tools to counteract the physiological response to anxiety, which was like really, I think, the biggest thing for me, because I can kind of handle, because I think I'm smart enough to understand intellectually what's happening in my head. But when my body betrays me, that's it for me.
Right.
If I can't have like a physical responses to anxiety. So she taught me all these tools, and it super helped.
It sounded like you need to like supersede your body, like go over your all of that stuff and just kind of like reset somehow.
Exactly.
In other ways than just like pills or talking.
Yeah. And I think medication medication has helped me through hard times in my life, but I was at a point where I just needed better tools.
That's interesting, because you do have movement, you have dance. So I kind of wonder, before that, so that was a turning point for you, like that, and that is so awesome, such an awesome. So that was a turning point for you, and you've changed in the last, say, 4 years, right?
Not to say that it's not like you snap your fingers and those sensations go away, but it was a combination of that. And then I caught a really early case of COVID and I got really bad long-term symptoms. I had it was pre-vaccine, and I got really bad long COVID, and my brain wasn't working. And I wasn't able to I couldn't talk or speak or understand emails, and I was terrified. And then I was like, well, I don't know what to do. No doctor knew what to do. Nobody knew anything. Yeah. So I was like, what do I know? Well, I know that alcohol is a neurotoxin, and probably that's one thing I can cut out that will help. Mm-hmm. So I did. And I just, I drank a lot before that. Mm-hmm. I was a big drinker. I am of a personality that's kind of all or nothing. So mm-hmm. I'm easily addicted to things. So, I am not an alcoholic. The minute I quit, I just stopped. It was fine. But when I got rid of alcohol, my anxiety improved so significantly. Wow. And then I did all this research on it, and I was like, duh. It shoots you full of cortisol, because I know this, mm-hmm. and you know this because you've taken my Pilates class. All the body wants is stasis. It's mm-hmm. all it wants. It wants balance. And so if you're drinking a bunch of this stuff that is a depressant, then your body shoots you full of cortisone to make you wake back up, right. so that you find stasis. But if you have a predetermined mental illness, then mm-hmm. you're knocked off kilter, and then it's a vicious circle.
Yeah, and you have to keep doing it.
Yeah. And so who knew, except for all the scientists.
Becca didn't know it, so it didn't matter. Now you know.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So from that point, that's how you kind of fixed that part.
Yeah.
But it seems like you've probably been using movement as therapy your whole life.
Yeah.
For, anxiety, worry, any kind of issues that you had before. That's probably gotten you to where you are, because you've been, pretty successful, I would say, so it seems like maybe if you had lived a different life and you didn't have movement, it might have taken you down earlier.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't even know. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. I don't even know who I am if I have to move. But I also kind of between you and me, it's also a really big lift for me to get myself moving.
Mm-hmm.
There's a part of me, there's a part of my psyche that's no, I don't want to. Okay, go. Uh-huh. I have to, kind of every day manage that because it's
yeah.
because it's so hard.
Feeling it.
Yeah.
Because you seem so energetic, you know, like
Thank
when you
you.
get to that place, you certainly motivate others to move.
Yeah. Well, I love it. To me it feels like the closest, you know, there's this quote. I can actually get it for you so that I'm not bastardizing it, but the Crystal Pite said that, like, essentially the thing about dance is that Crystal Pite is a choreographer from Canada. The thing about dance is that it exists in its moment of disappearance. Like, to me, that is so freaking wild. Like, I do this thing that does not exist after I have stopped doing it. Like, it just exists only in the moment that it is in. And, like, you can record a dance or you can repeat a dance, but it's never the same because you're never the same body every day. You have different salinity. You have, like, different, you know, your cells are constantly changing. It's a literal, like, poof, it's gone. In the moments of its appearance, it disappears. And I've always kind of, like, thought that is just so correct, because to me that's the human experience. Like, that is really it, and so it teaches me a lot. So now at the point that I'm, you know, that's, she was talking about dance, but I think about it in, like, any physical practice that I'm in. That's the experience that I have. It's like the experience of, like, living in the moment. That sounds so corny.
That is meditation right there.
Right. And yeah. So to me, at this juncture, movement is movement. Like, whether I'm lifting a weight or doing Pilates or walking the dogs or dancing, to me, I am able to channel that into my practice. But it took me a while to get there.
Since we're talking about movement and meditation and, you know, how it's just like kind of being in the present moment, it really it's so crazy because I just interviewed somebody about improv and she makes a living doing improv.
Cool. Like theater improv? Theater improv.
Cool. But she takes it to the corporate world.
Cool.
And basically she's kind of distilled it to this thing. It's like, I can't meditate. I don't know how to meditate, but improv is my meditation. Yeah. When I'm in a scene with somebody, it's right there.
Yeah.
But it was exactly what you're saying about dance. Like, that's where the art is. And then after the scene is gone, it's gone. And so you have to be in the moment. So
isn't that wild?
Yeah, it's so crazy.
It's
but
cool.
I think since, you know, they talk so much these days about meditation being this medication, right, for anxiety or for depression. I wonder what you know about maybe the science behind embodiment, like, meaning bringing yourself back into your body, like grounding yourself in your body. And it doesn't have to be scientific, but maybe the health behind that, because that's something you do with yourself all the time so that you're not, like, caught up in your head.
Spin out of control.
Right. But you're also teaching your students to get in their bodies and feel their bodies.
Yeah. That's an interesting question. Yes, definitely not a scientist. So, I have a lot of experience in physical practice of dance and movement, but I'm definitely not a scientist. So this will be like anecdata.
I love it.
Isn't that what Huberman calls it? Anecdata. I have a regular meditation practice. I meditate every morning, but I only do it weekdays because I think everything in moderation. For me, for a person who has an addictive personality, that's really important. So even meditation in moderation for me, I have to be careful about that. But we're kind of programmed, because we live in this very late stage capitalist society, to be very external. Like, we are tending to other things a lot. I'm going to try to make sense of this. So we'll see if I get there. But I am guilty of this, as I'm sure you are too, because you have people that you care about and jobs that you do and stuff. And so a lot of time during the day is spent attending to other things, other tasks, other people. And so what I found, I'll talk about my students first, because it's easier to talk about them than me in this regard. But what I notice is that they come in and they're kind of like staring at me for answers. I'm like, I don't have those answers. They have those answers, right? Like, you are the expert of your own experience, not me. All I have is a set of skills to talk to you about. It's your choice whether or not you use them, right? I can't force anyone to do anything. Nobody at FSCJ is required to take Pilates or yoga. Nobody. But they do. and they come to class. So they've made a choice to be there and spend the time with me. So the thing that I try to talk about, I did it this morning, so we'll see if I can repeat it, is like, what if you just allow yourself to be the most important thing and pay attention to that and notice how you're feeling. Mm-hmm. and like stop kind of worrying. Like, I know that we're engaged, we and my students are engaged in a relationship where they are students and I have to grade them. Unfortunately, you know how I feel.
Yes,
you know how I feel about
that.
But that's the relationship we're in. It's my job. I have to. Right. But if we can put that aside, and I can say, what is it that you are experiencing? How are you feeling? Can you experience that without trying to correct it? Can you just notice that you are a body? And can you do it without assuming that you know how you feel? Can you just pay attention to that? And I can look across the room and see everyone's energetic practice change. And like, usually it's just people laying there. Like, usually it's just like on their backs. We do like a check-in at the beginning of my classes where we either meditate in Pilates or I mean, in yoga or in Pilates, we're like laying, you remember, you like lay on your back, close your eyes and breathe. And I can literally see the way in which people's physical bodies change. Mm-hmm. Like, and I don't even know how to describe it. Like, I'm not even sure it would make sense to describe it, but I can see it. Mm-hmm. And so I think that maybe what it is that like people just need the invitation to care about themselves again, or they need the time to, or like they need a grade for it.
No, I think creating a space. Yeah. You're creating that space for them. I need that. Like, I know the importance of doing it and checking in with myself, but to hear an external voice say, feel your elbows and feel into your toes, it just is helpful, you know? So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I need that too. I mean, like,
so you see them change from like being in their heads and thinking about their grades to being in their bodies and thinking about caring for themselves.
Yeah. Here's your permission to take up space. Yeah. Here is your permission to breathe. Here is your permission to experience your blood, your bones, your guts, your muscles. I mean, that's the thing. Like, we are human people living inside these bodies that we live in hopefully for 80 to 90 years. And it's like, feel that for a minute. I mean, I think that for myself, you know, it's maybe the part of the reason why I've been moving so much is because it's like hard for me to feel that sometimes. But sometimes we just have to come up against our mortality a little bit. Like, we have to be like, these are the things that are inside me, and this is the way that they work, and here's the way that I can care for them. And what does it mean to bring them into balance? What does balance even mean? Yeah. An invitation to work on it or something. Yeah. I don't know. They seem to do pretty well.
I think you're doing so much for them. For anybody that you know, comes into your space is going to definitely, you always create this very calm environment. Like, I know that I've appreciated it so much.
Sarah.
Tell me about Jacksonville Dance Theatre, and then tell me about your upcoming shows or anything else that you want to like talk about.
Thank you. Okay, so Jacksonville Dance Theatre, and I know your listeners can't see it, but you're looking at a wall of Jacksonville Dance Theatre shows, posters now.
That's a lot of shows. That's all the shows.
It's many.
It's
not all of them, but
really?
It's most of them.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a professional modern dance company, contemporary modern dance company, that I co-founded in 2012. And I currently run the company. I'm the artistic director. And my co-founder is Katie McCoggin. She's my friend that I mentioned before. But we founded it because when I moved to Jacksonville from Los Angeles, I was like still pretty young, and I was dancing in LA, and I moved here and I was like, where are the jobs? Yeah. Like, I'd never lived in a city that didn't have jobs for dancers. Wow. And I was like, and I kind of panicked, and I was like, I'm too young to retire. Like, I just had this sense that I wasn't ready to stop dancing yet. Yeah. And now I think back on it, I was like, I was so young. I shouldn't have. No one should stop dancing when they're that young.
Shouldn't have even considered it.
Yeah. And so I was like, well, what do I do? And so we were doing like projects and little things here and there. And I would travel a lot. And then I was like, what if we founded a dance company? And like, we said the words and then it happened. I mean, it was not and is still not easy. It's a hard slog. Like, if you've ever run a nonprofit company, you know, it's like wild. And dance is the bastard child of the arts, and modern dance is like the stepchild, bastard child of the arts. So bringing, so I do something that not a lot of people like know about. I don't mean to patronize the audience. I'm sure people know about modern dance, but it's like, you're certainly educating the Jacksonville community. Well, with right. You have been. Yeah. And it's like, it's a lot of things. It's like running a dance company because I want to make art. And then it's running a dance company because I think the city needs one. And to employ dancers, to provide training, to provide outreach. So we're in season 11, which is amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. And we pay all of our dance. I mean, that's really important for maybe your listeners to know, is that like a professional company means that the artists get paid. So our dancers get paid for everything that they do, whether they take class, even if it's dance fitness, or rehearsal or performances, or touring. We pay them for everything. And there's, I think, 11 performers currently this season. So yeah, we're turning the corner on to season 12 will come up next year. But the last local performance that we have in Jacksonville is May 13th at the Florida Theater in downtown Jacksonville at 8:00. And you should definitely come. But that's kind of like our big exclamation point on the end of the season. We've had a long season. We've done a lot of performing, but that's kind of our big local show. We love the Florida Theater. They're a community partner. That's where our offices are. So I will be presenting choreography that I made. We're a repertory company, which means that I am not the only choreographer whose work we do. We actually do a lot of different choreographers' works. Is that what repertory means? Yeah, like a repertory company just means that it's not the Rebecca Levy show. Yeah, okay. But we do my work, we do local artist work, and then we commission artists. So we have 2 commissions in this show. Ebony Amos, who is a emerging choreographer from Tennessee, who's amazing. She's brilliant. And Bliss Kohlmeyer, who is a more established choreographer who lives in the Tampa area, originally from San Francisco. And I am showing a piece that I premiered last year, so I'm showing it again. It's called La Mesa, which is a piece, it's about women's voices. Oh, sounds cool. Yeah, that's the best way that I can say it. It was like a response to the quieting of women's voices. Oh my gosh, I love it. Yeah. So there's no shortage of inspiration living in Florida. Yeah. You know what I mean? No. Yeah, that's why we live here, right? For all this interesting stories. Yeah. That's why I live here as a writer. Yeah, right. So and I like to activate elements of dance theater, which is like dance theater of the German tradition. So I like to use text and props and repetition and duration. To more story. Yeah. So it's dance, but there's, in my piece, there's a poem, like one of the dancers recites a poem into horn. Sounds like it's more intertextual. There's different media. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So we do a little of everything. Yeah. Which is cool. Okay. You should come check it out. I'll definitely be there. Yeah. Okay. So one last really quick question. Do you have any quick advice for coping with anxiety, whether it's through movement or whatever other practices that you cope? Yeah. Sounds like things have gotten a lot. Yeah, they've improved easier for you. And I am not, again, I'm not an expert. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a scientist. These are just things that I do. So they work for me, but they have worked. And one of the things that I think is I'll just say this because I think it's so important. Part of what was so hopeless about managing a mental illness for me is that it was relentless. I felt like I never had relief, because I remember my father used to say to me, emotions are like waves, they come and they go, and I'm not being able to understand that because for me it would just crash and crash and crash and crash and never go away. So one of the things that I'm able to do now, I was actually talking about it to my yoga class today, is if it feels like there's no space, I try to just crack it open enough to get smoke through it. Even if you can't get daylight in there, I try to just open it enough so that I can blow through it, and then once I have a crack in it, it can start to kind of unfold. And so I do use breathing. I use I'm not a DBT expert, but a lot of the things in there are literally take a shower. There's things like that, physical things to do, take a walk, take a shower. She used to tell me to freeze lemons and suck on them
Mm-hmm.
if I was like spiraling into, I don't know the science on that, but it helps. Like, or I'll use a cold pack or something like that.
Some interruption, maybe.
Exactly. Yeah. Just to kind of reset, as you said before. And what I've noticed is just that, and maybe the sobriety too. I have to credit that too, because I mean, there is something divine in sobriety too. So I can't like just ignore that, but there is much, much more room. And when I do have those experiences, which I do, with, they still come up, they even come up daily, like the wave recedes, like my father was right. Don't tell him.
Don't tell him. Sounds like he was onto something, but like you had to manage it differently.
Yeah. So it pulls itself back. So those are my tools.
Yeah.
But they help me, and just being able to be like, sometimes I call it like, I'll talk to myself and be like, it's cool, your brain is glitching today.
Yeah.
It's not you.
Yeah.
It's just your brain glitching, and I'll be like, brain, get it in order.
Yeah.
And it will.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Thank
you so much.
Yeah, Sarah.
And thank you for talking.
Oh my gosh, it's so fun.
Great.
I loved it. Thank you for inviting me. I like talking to you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Lifeyness. I'm Professor Sarah, and until next time, begin exploring a more playful and joyful you. Embrace that girlhood energy for life. And last but not least, remember to follow me on Instagram at Book of Lifeyness.